Jana, can you hear me?
I can.
All right, good deal. You're my lone ranger this evening, looks like.
Well, that's a bummer.
I know. So I told Megan, so what do you need to go through this or what? She goes, yeah, just go ahead and go through it and we will record it and we'll be good to go.
I'm sure you will do well. I may not be as interactive as you need me to be, though.
That's fine. No, it's not a problem. It's like I'll go through it, and then if there's any questions, they've got them in contact. They can always email me along the way. It's not a problem. We'll go ahead and get started this evening. I appreciate you. I'm trying to make this work. Can you see my screen? I guess before we get started.
Yes.
All right, good deal.
Yes.
Make this work here tonight. All right. So what we're going to go over this evening, from the coach's standpoint, is kind of how to get started. Hopefully, from these anybody who's interested in getting started with a livestock or meats judging team. I'm going to talk about kind of the basics of how to get started, how to get your kids kind of started with reasons, and kind of how I handle it from a coach's side, from little guys all the way up to the big kid, senior age kids. The main one of the biggest things is how to take note taking and how to be effective at that, and kind of the reasons format and how to give those reasons. Then I've got multiple example sets, what some sets should look like. And then kind of how you should dress properly, what we expect, especially on the livestock side, for reasons, and then how I handle and conduct practices from a coach's side, with reasons and animals, and then the last one, wrap up with any kind of accommodations we might need to make for the youth for different things. So as we get started, most of the time, if you have never coached a livestock judging team, especially with reasons, and I tie this into meats too, because we also give reasons in meat. I like to start my little guys off and try to keep it fun. We judge candy bars, we judge hats, we judge different things at the beginning, because there's no wrong answer. How do you place these hats down here at the bottom? Just for an example, we'll set 4 hats on the table, and let those kids tell me about why you placed 1 over 2, 1, 2, 3, and 4. You place them in that order. And we do the same thing with candy bars. We do a judging camp over the summer for the little guys, and we do the same thing. We bring them in there, break them into groups, let them judge candy bars. We talk about the way the notes should be taken, and we'll cover the kind of note taking format here in a minute. And I tie that into the reason side of it and let those kids, and then I make them write up a set of reasons, and then I make them get up in front of everybody in the class and read those set of reasons, so they kind of have an understanding of how the presentation works and what it goes. This can be very simple. Anything from I placed 1 over 2 because I like the color yellow. There's no right or wrong answer to this. It's just something to get those kids out there, get them interacting, kind of get them some ring time, but time working through things. That's how we start all our little guys, even the older kids the first time. I even like throwing in there for my seniors every now and then. Just something fun for them to do, something different, something for them to kind of make them a little more relaxed, a little more comfortable, because they're sometimes they can get pretty stressed out working for that district and state contest. That's kind of how we start things. The next thing I do is I have a livestock judging manual that I put together over the years from when I was in college judging all the way through. I still pick up some tidbits from the manuals that my kids get when they go to judging camps over the summer. It's got reasons in there. It's got terms. It's got pictures, lots of different things that I like to utilize. I make one of those for each one of my livestock judging kids in my county. I'm going to give those out at the beginning of the year when we start in August. And then that way they have it with them. Sometimes we change, but if you get one last year, but sometimes you don't need a new one. We keep a lot of those on hand. I'll be happy to share those with anybody that wants them. There's nothing fancy to them there. It's just pretty basic. You can find lots of different examples online. A lot of OSU, A&M, all those have lots of great examples out there for us as of livestock judging manuals, PowerPoints, different things. But that's just kind of some things I do as a coach for my guys, the little ones and the big ones. I provide a lot of example sets, some very basic ones to some very detailed collegiate kids schedules or reason sets. That way they can kind of see what they all look like. And then at practices, I like to have my little guys sit in there a few at a time, sit in the reasons room with me when my senior kids are talking sets. That way they can kind of see and hear what they're supposed to look like, and kind of see and look what the presentation is supposed to look like as they get into the room themselves. And we do highly encourage our little guys, and I keep saying little, I'll refer to my juniors. That second and third year of their junior judging careers, we're starting to introduce the reasons formats to them slowly. That way, when they get to an intermediate where they do talk reasons at the district contest, it's not foreign to them. They're not thrown in the fire. We try to start them a little bit younger. That way, they're a little more prepared when it comes that time. All right, and here's some examples. I'll start all mine off. Let's start taking effective note taking. This is where it all starts. And everybody asks, what should I use? A clipboard, a steno? And here's the next slide, kind of tells you, the equipment. You need a clipboard or a steno. I'm not particular on either one. A lot of the guys and senior age kids, they love the stenos. They're smaller, they're easier to carry. The downfall of that for the little guy, for juniors and intermediate, is it's hard to keep a Scantron on those. And I'm not a big component of wanting to fold those Scantrons, even though I know all those senior kids do it. If they're going to do it, I make sure they fold them in a spot where it's going to be still help make sure that it's legible. Make it slide it in that steno, but preferably those juniors, intermediates, I really do encourage them to have a clipboard. Makes things a lot easier. And then, of course, they need a pen and pencil. So I'm going to go back one here. And so even on a regular piece of notebook paper, we set them up like this, where our boxes look like this. We have 3 big boxes going down the left-hand column, 6 little boxes going down the right-hand column. Then we have a space at the top where you can put your, I call it stuff at the top of your ID section, where you put your big stuff. You put if you're in a pig class, you have a belted gilt, a black and white pig, just different. That's where you put your big animal IDs. Colors for steers, you have a red steer, a silver steer, a black steer. One's branded, one's got horns, just different things like that. That's where I tell my kids to put all that at the top. And then going down the list, your top box there on the left-hand column, that's for your class winner. And then your one over here, your little boxes on the top on the right, those are for your grants for your second place and your criticisms. And we'll talk more and more about what goes in those as we work through this. That's just kind of how I set up my notes, and that's how those kids kind of take it. So it takes them a minute. They write, first thing I tell them all is when you turn around to the class, write down the big things at the top, write down your big IDs, first thing that hits you, big picture. That the black steer is the big-footed, big-bellied, stout one. Something like that. Just what the big things up top to help you remember that animal. And then I do that for all 4 animals. And then you kind of think about, all right, how do we place them? And if we place them 1, 2, 3, 4, just for easy numbers there, 1, 2, 3, 4. So my winner is going to go in this top one up here, this little example in the top right-hand corner, your notes for that individual animal. The black steer that wins, he's the biggest top, biggest ended, boldest body, stoutest one. He's just the best. He's the best all the way around. He's the best body, the best, heaviest muscle, and it has the most show ring appeal. So he's going to win. In your second one, so is there anything at your second place steer, or I'm just using steers for an example, your second place animal is better than your first place one? Sometimes there might be a slight difference. Sometimes there might not be. So then you just give that animal a grant in his own right. Now here's another, now sure, 2 is heavy muscled in his own right, but he's also shallower bodied and narrower constructed, or narrower than 1, so he's second. Then you go back into your middle pair, 2 over 3. Then you go back into 2 there and describe him. And then what makes 3 better than 2 if there's anything? And then what's the reason 3's third? You do the same thing again in your bottom pair for 3 for 3. And then one thing that I don't do that they did on this little place, I don't have a spot for number 4. So go back over here to this one. This only has spots for your first, second, and third down your left-hand column. When I get to my bottom right-hand box, that's where I end it. Whatever's good about the 4th place animal goes in that top there on the very bottom, and then the bad. And most of the time, like I tell all my kids, 9 times out of 10, that bottom box can be, they're the lightest muscle, they're the narrowest, they're the shallowest body, they're the frailest bones. 9 times out of 10 in any market animal class, pigs, sheep, goats, hogs, that's going to be your last place animal is going to be your lightest muscled animal. Just because, again, it's a market class and the market fundamentals are muscles number 1 priority. And so most times so I kind of tell them not to pencil that in right off, don't write that in stone, but most time they can go ahead and probably put that in there to help them if they're looking for some notes or anything when they get to that point. That can be in that bottom right hand box. It's like over here on the left, on the big example on the right. That what is he? He's the lightest muscle. He's the poorest composition. So there you go. That's the easy things to put down there to keep it simple in that bottom pair. Work through my notes here. Again, keep your notes short and brief as possible. Work on getting mental images of those animals. I have a lot of kids that like to start off and try to write the reasons out like you're writing a paper. I don't recommend that solely because you're trying to memorize that set just as you wrote it. And if you get in there and you're nervous and you're trying to memorize 1 or 2 sets or 4 sets for our senior kids at their district contest and state, if you forget a word in there, your brain is trying to remember that word, and you're going to stumble and you're going to stop and you're going to lose your momentum in your set. Versus if you're going off of your shorthanded notes and the big picture of what's in your mind, trying to be a visual learner, taking images of what trying to remember what was there, then it makes things a lot easier. You can stop, take a deep breath, and think back. All right, I'm on the middle pair between 2 and 3. 2 was the red steer. That was this. And then it kind of helps you get your flow back in your momentum. Yes, it's okay to write them down, but again, at the end of the day, I don't encourage that. I still have some young ladies that do it. That's just the way they've learned to do it. It just takes them a little bit longer. They have to work a little bit harder at it to get it all done in that short amount of time that you're given. But it is possible. That's just kind of some effective note-taking tips that I have. Any questions? All right. So the format, how it should be put together, kind of what Megan wanted me to work on. Like I said, it's important to lay out a clear and concise image of the class. You're telling that reasons taker what you saw when you turned around. You explain to them in the best you can why you placed it the way you did. You could be as short with it, it's sweet, or you can be as long as you want. Here in a minute, I kind of put a time on it. I've had some kids talk extremely long, and when I say long, the longest one I've had in a long time was a young man, and some of his sets were almost 2 minutes. Is that too long? It is, but he was using those as performance sets for his breeding animals. Those take a little bit more time. He was very intricate in how he spoke. It worked for him. Most of the sets, I tell my senior kids, 1.5 minutes, 1:40 at the most. Try to be less than that when you're in there. If you're intermediate, talk a minute. They're doing something, because those intermediates, a lot of times their terminology is not there to be able to talk for that long. So as you're going there, so then you go to briefly describe your class winner, as we talked about a while ago, and then you compare him to the other animals in the class. And just as an example, you always start with, I placed this class of market animals, or I placed this class of breeding heifers, market sheep, market lambs, 1, 2, 3, 4, however you placed it. And then my next statement out of my kid's mouth is, I started the class with number 1. Or in place of 1, you can put an ID term. And I say ID, you can put his color, his whatever. I started with the yellow steer, as he's the most complete, structurally correct, and market ready steer of the class. And from there, you go down to each pair, and you could say, starting in your top pair, I placed 2 over 1 or 1 over 2 in the top pair because, and then finish that pair off by comparing and describing the animals in the class. When you work your way down, that reasons book, the reasons note format that we just talked about right over here, and you work your way down all the way through each one of them. Each class and each reasons notes, you'll have a grant and a criticism for each pair. The grant aspect of the animal is what is better or more desirable about that animal than the one that's in front of him. Sometimes, like I said earlier, there might not be anything that makes that animal number 2 better than number 1. And so when that's the case, you just have to give him something in his own right. Like, yes, this is yes, 2 is heavy muscled in his own right, but he's not as heavy muscled as 1. And he's also flatter boned and narrower at the ground. So I left him second, or something like that. There's different ways. There's multiple different ways to skin a cat when we come to and talk about these things, and everybody does it different. Every coach teaches their kid a little bit different. This is how I taught when I was a kid, or it's how I was taught when I was in 4-H. And then I grew and expanded that when I got to college. And then I brought that with me when I started as an agent and coaching these livestock judging teams. And so every kid has to work through things a little bit different as well, as far as how they transition from grant to criticism, how they flow from one pair to the next. As long as they kind of keep that same format, that kind of same stream, it's all going to work. Meats is a little bit different, not a lot, but it does take a little bit different approach sometimes. But I primarily coach the livestock judging. I have some other guys help coach my meat teams. But the biggest thing is the way you put everything together. I still like my notes the same way, and they do too. And your terminology, your transition words, those are the words you use to move from pair to pair, and different things. Your market terms, your breeding animal terms, and then of course your carcass terms for your market classes and different things like that. Start off as a beginning reasons giver for any level, intermediate or senior. Your term bank's going to be very small. But as they grow and you get more experience, those terms are going to grow. You could build on those terms. When people first start, their sets sound really repetitive. They're using the same words over and over. They're using heavy muscle, bigger hips, stouter hips. They're using the same words over and over. And once they get comfortable with those terms, and they can make it all the way through an entire set or multiple sets and not stumble and not have to stop and bobble, and they feel like you feel as a coach that they're comfortable, it's time to expand. You'll kind of see those kids as they progress, the light bulb comes on. And so you have to figure out when it's that time to start introducing more terms. And as a coach, if you've never done it before, where do you get those terms? Again, that's where I utilize those collegiate summer camps. I don't push one college or one camp over any other camp. But I know I highly encourage my kids to go to a camp, if not multiple, during the summer. There's nothing that's going to get you further in your judging career than going to those camps, continually getting, talking those reasons. I know Jana, your boys have been to those camps, at least one if not multiple during the summer. Am I correct?
Yes, and that is definitely where they grow the most, beyond the contest they go to, but that is where they really expand that reasons, because there's not a lot of reasons contests typically through the years.
Yeah. And that's why I do encourage my kids. I mean, my kids go, and my kids have gone since they were little. Glenn is one of the few that have a camp for little guys. Like I said, that's where I went to school. I don't advocate for one camp over the other. I think I tell my kids, as long as you're going to a camp, because you're spending that camp, you're there for 3-4 days, and you're talking reasons for those 3 or 4 days. No, I mean, even as a coach, I can't keep those kids engaged that long, and they've got them there from the morning till night, and they're talking reasons the whole time. And it's the more times you talk, the more times you're giving those sets, no matter how good or bad you are at them, you build, you get better, and that's how you get to where those guys that are talking at those kids that are made it to state and talking at those 47s, 48s, 49s, those kids that are going to college. That's where and you're getting your foot in the door with those college kids as well, or those college coaches and different things. So I highly encourage camps. And then while you're at those camps, you get those same kind of books like I was talking about, or those livestock judging manuals. And that's where I borrow some of the stuff from those collegiate camps, as well as build my own with different sets and different things in there. And let me just show you, I think my next slide is this is a very blanket one. I give this to my newbies right here, and they can fill this out when they're getting started. I started with blank, and then it kind of tells you, it's kind of a step-by-step how to put everything together, and they can kind of fill in the blanks to kind of help them write it out and kind of get an idea of where things need to go. We print a few of these off for our juniors, our intermediates, and juniors as we're working through practices. Kind of give them an idea. We don't, they can't take it with them at the contest, but they kind of get an idea of what it's supposed to look like. It makes it a little easier for them as they're working on how to put everything together. So some very basic example sets. I'll leave these up here for a minute. These are some that I've typed out to give my juniors and intermediates as we're working through things. This is a market class. I like the blank 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, and you just kind of plug and play. And you can change a lot of these terms out and words out. But again, this is just kind of a very basic set that I give out to all my little guys. So that way they kind of have an idea of what, again, it's kind of similar to this one right here. A little more words in this one, but just different things. And I've got multiple example sets here, and I think Megan said she's going to share this slide set with everybody. So you can go back and look at these, and you can always reach out to me. I've got these plus many, many more. I don't mind sharing with you. It's a little longer market lamb set right here. You don't have to read all through them tonight. That's not a problem. And then I've got some little bit longer ones here that some of my previous senior judging kids have typed up, wrote up for me. I tried to find one from a couple of years ago by one of my young men named Case LaRoe that talked at 50 at the state contest. I couldn't find where he saved it at. I could not find it on my computer where I had him come in and record it too. One of the things I do as a coach is when my kids get through at a contest, district, state, or whatever, and they score it really well, 48, 49, something that, or even a 50 on the rare occasion, and they set the, I say, they had a great day. I make them come in, type that set out. That way I have it for other people to read. And then I also have them come in one day and record that set with me. That way I can hear how it sounded and I can share it with other people how they sounded. And that's one thing I'll talk about here in practice is how some of the things we do at practice that some people might not do, that I do to kind of help work on their kids' presentations as well. Again, these are just some longer sets. Some of these are from more of a collegiate style, but these are, like you said, just a few example sets that I have to share with y'all that I pulled out some of my notebooks. The next thing is big, what to wear. And these are just some pictures of some judging teams that are around. Again, khaki pants of any color. You see the one young man here, he's wearing blue jeans. You can get by with blue jeans. I don't encourage that, but we do. It's not a no. But if you do, we'll work with you. But I do highly encourage the khaki pants, a nice button down or solid colored shirt. The girls don't have to be per se a button down, but a solid colored or not a whole lot of loudness to the shirts. Is how I say it. A blazer's a must. And I'm not big on. I know some people say they got to be a certain color. Me personally, I kind of like the variety of colors you see here. When I was a 4-H'er, everybody wore the blue blazers. Everybody had a navy blue blazer. And the first thing I did when we walked into college is that man took all our navy blue blazers and threw them on the back of the chair and said, "You will not wear these. Everybody go find you a different color. You're going to be different. We don't want everybody to be the same." So if you see here in this picture, not many of these kids have the same colors on, and there's nothing wrong with that. As long as you look presentable, professional, clean shoes, boots, preferably boots for guys and girls. I know a lot of people have gone to wearing hey dudes or stuff like that. Just preferably no tennis shoes. I did crop out the bottom picture here. One of those guys had tennis shoes on. I tried to make sure we took their feet out of that bottom picture. A tie, gentlemen, I prefer a tie, neatly tied if at all possible. If you don't have tie, there's many ways we can get one tied for you. I don't like loud, nothing with words on it. I'm good with patterns, but no words. Of course, no hats, no caps. Make sure your hair is combed, you're clean shaved. Look professional. That's imagine if you were judging a livestock show, even a county fair, those guys out there judging those county fairs, major livestock shows, they're professional. They look professional. They've got a jacket on. They've got a tie. Some of them do wear hats, but for us here, we're not going to wear hats. But they look professional. We want you to look as professional as possible when we go in there and give those reasons. I have a stack of jackets in my storage closet that kids have outgrown for over the years, and those parents have donated them back to the program. So I have kids. I don't have a jacket. I hate to go buy one right now because my kid's going to outgrow by the next contest. I understand. I've got a stack of them that my kids have done that, as well as others that have donated them back to the office. And that's something, if you don't have that, you might think about doing that, or Goodwill. A couple of the jackets that I've owned myself currently, I've got them from Goodwill. You go there, look, you might find something that you'd be surprised what you can find there, and they work. That's one thing our coach always encouraged us to do when we were in college. Run down to Goodwill. You never know what you're going to find there. Sometimes you can find a really nice one for pennies on the dollar. But think about stuff like that. Ladies, again, you still with the blazer. Jewelry is okay. You kind of see everybody's got a little bit of different on in these pictures. There's not too much that is distracting. You don't want anything that's going to distract you, too blingy, too much distraction. You don't want any of that when you walk into that reasons room. You want them to be listening and focused on what you have to say, not all the jewelry that you're wearing and making noises and rings on your hands and bracelets and clattering. You don't want all that. If you wear makeup and that's what you want, and you're good with that, there's nothing wrong with that. Make sure your hair's done out of your face, nothing too up, too out there and wild, but also just make sure it look. Again, you want to look professional. I don't tell you what to wear. I'm not one of those coaches that says everybody's going to wear a white shirt and a blue tie and a blue jacket. We're not doing that. That's not me. As long as you look professional and you look the part, I'm good with it. I know some teams like to have everybody looking the same, but for me, and that's the way I was. That's the way I was coached, and that's the way I'm coaching my kids. I coach my kids. There's no right or wrong as long as you all look professional. Presentation. This is kind of how when you get in there and you're given the reasons. These two pictures here, just some different ones I found online. You should stand with your feet about shoulder width apart, your hands down and together, either in front of you or behind you. If you're gonna twist, you'll fidget with your fingers, you twiddle your thumbs. I always encourage my kids to put their hands behind their back. It just makes it a little easier. That way, if you are twiddling your thumbs, playing with your fingers or whatever, it's not a distraction. If you do want to put them in front, I kind of tell you just kind of crisscross them right there about waist high. Just kind of hold them, still, and don't be a distraction. Speak clearly and confidently. Enunciate your words. Use proper sentence structure. Is extremely important when giving these reasons. Make sure you are enunciating so they can hear you. Make sure you're loud enough. One thing that some of these kids understand going into this, our district contest, where we give our reasons. It's not in a classroom setting. You might be in a horse stall. You might be in a closet. You might be in the arena floor, and on the other side of a wall is another kid giving a set of reasons. You need to make sure that you're loud enough and you're speaking clear enough that reason taker can hear you, so he doesn't get confused and get lost. Because if we can't hear you, we're not going to stop and ask you to start over. You're just going to keep going. You're going to be done, and then we're not going to be able to give you the score you probably deserve because we couldn't hear you. So make sure you're telling those kids to be prepared for where they're coming from. Be loud. Don't be in there yelling. I got a lot of those kids that come in there, they're yelling at you. Be loud. Be assertive in your voice, but don't be so loud as you're yelling at them. That's kind of where I'm talking about the appropriate level. Depends on your room. Maintain good eye contact as you're going. Try not to move your body. You try to keep your body as still as possible. I was bad about that when I judged. Wanted to move my head, move my body. It took a long time to work on some of that, and that's where I encourage my kids as they're giving reasons, and I'll talk about some of that more in practice. Yourself, and you can kind of see your facial expressions, your head moving, your hands, and all that, and how to work on controlling those so that's not a distraction in the reasons room. And again, talk about the appropriate amount of time to spend on your set. A minute and a half is probably a good number to shoot for on the seniors. Some of those intermediates are going to be a lot shorter than that, but that's kind of the number we shoot for. It could be a little longer on a breeding class with some performance data in there. Just kind of depends. All right, so practices. How do I handle practices from my standpoint? We do what works best for the majority. We practice multiple times. We start off in August with a new member or just an orientation class, bring everybody in, kind of lay the groundwork, say, hey, here's the contest we're going to do throughout the year, and kind of how we're going to run the finances for this project, because all these contests do cost money. We have and registration fees and different things. We lay all the groundwork for that. We give out our judging manuals. We get our rosters for email roster. My primary form of communication with my teams is through email, and then when we get ready for contest, everything is through text messages and group me type stuff. And then we try to practice 3 or 4 times between August and the October contest. to kind of lay that groundwork for your basics. We do a cattle night, a sheep and goat night, a hog night, and then we might just do a general, just livestock judging 101 night. Try to get those out of the way. And I have a couple of guys that coach with me. I don't coach this all by myself. We have a couple of guys that coach with me, and so we'll divide and conquer. We might take those kids and divide them in half and do, market steers and breeding heifers, and then market goats and breeding ewes and breeding does and market goats. We might split up our rooms so you get a little more one-on-one time with the kids. If you have live animals are available, I highly encourage you make some live animal practices. Sometimes those aren't always available or easy to get together, but we'll have some heifer classes we can get together at some ranches locally. We might get a steer class or two here and there. But pigs, market sheep, and market goats sometimes are hard to get a hold of. So we utilize a lot of our contests as live animal practices. I'll make sure my kids take notes. We spend ample time walking through those animals after the contest that we might not get to see at home. And then we also subscribe to the livestockjudging.com website as for the pro membership. So we'll set up classes on there. I'll send those out to kids and say, hey, this week you could judge these 3 classes. And then they'll judge them, and I can go on there as a coach and as an admin and look at what they placed them. I'll make sure my seniors are taking notes I'll ask them some questions on there, make sure my seniors are taking notes for reasons purposes, and we do have reasons practices. We'll start throwing a few reasons practices in there before Christmas time. And then after that, we start the spring contest. And that's pretty fast and furious that we just finished. So we don't have a lot of practices at this time of year. And then starting about now, we'll actually start practicing pretty regular from April on in through the district contest. The reasons practices multiple times a week if possible. What works best for us in McLennan County right now is we practice on Sunday evening. Sunday afternoon started like at 4 o'clock, and we get through by 6 o'clock. Those kids can still go home. They can get their barn stuff done in the evening. There's not a lot of sports events on Sunday. Trying to get around everybody's sport, track, softball, baseball, all that just makes it hard. Sundays have worked the best for us in the springtime. I know it's not ideal for some people, but that's what works for us. If you can't make it, I understand that some of my senior kids, they even come in during the week after school and talk reasons to me at the office, and I'm good with that. I just want to hear you talk sets. That's my biggest thing. I want to hear you come in and talk sets. So we might work on practice animals, or I'll send them online classes to judge, and then they'll work on that. They'll work on their reasons, and they come in and they might have 2 or 3 sets ready to give me in a 20-minute time frame. I'm good with that as long as I'm listening to you give sets. And then another thing we do is I have all those kids at the bottom here. It says homework. I try to give those kids homework. Take those sets that you just read me or that you just presented to me, and go home and type them up on your phone, on your computer, or whatever, and then send those to me via email, text message, whatever you want to, however you want to send them to me. Send them to me, and I can read over them. That way I can say, hey, let's change the wording here and here, or let's change some words here and there. You can see how many times you use the word steer, how many times you use the word pig or hog, and sometimes it gets a little excessive. And that's what let's interject some different words here. Let's change our sentence structure to say the same thing, but sound a little different. And that way we don't sound repetitive all the way down through each one of our pairs. And another thing I also do is I have a camera. I record a lot of my seniors giving sets, and then we turn around, and as we start talking about them, I'll play it for them. And they can see and they can hear themselves talk. They can hear their voice fluctuations. They can see their facial expressions, their presentation, and what they need to work on. They can take that home as homework, and they can give those sets in the mirror and see their facial expressions, see their voice fluctuations, hear that. Everybody's got an app on their phone. They can record themselves talking, voice memos. Use that, talk those sets out. You hear yourself talk, send those to me. I'll critique them as a coach. It's very easy for you to send me those things over the phone as a text message. I can sit down on my chair at night after the kids go to bed, and I can critique those sets at night. That's just some of the things I do with my kids to kind of help. They're working on reasons. Even if they're typing them out as they were saying them, they're still putting them in. They're still writing them out. They're still putting them on paper as a practice, and that makes things. It kind of helps you get you to the work through that next level. For accommodations, and Megan wanted me to put this one in there. We, as any 4-H FFA event, if those kids have a disability or something, then they need assistance. there's always ways for us to work with them. We'll find a way to work with those kids. Don't let your kids go into a contest and not be prepared. Like I said, I put on several contests. I work with lots of these different livestock shows and their livestock judging contests. And those officials are always willing to help those kids, but they have to know ahead of time. We don't know that kid might be dyslexic or he might have trouble reading. One of those, I had one kid one year, third grader. I didn't realize the first contest went to State Fair, Texas, first one he went to. That was a year that they gave the kids the questions on a piece of paper and they had to read them. That young man couldn't read. I did not know that until after the contest. He missed everyone. He said, I didn't answer my question. I said, well, why not? He said, I didn't know what it said. How come? He said, I can't read those words. Well, if I'd known that ahead of time, I could have asked those officials or contest officials, and they would have made that accommodation, and they would have read those questions to that young man where he could have answered them. So we have to know that as a coach, parents had that conversation with those coaches. Coaches had those conversations with those parents, and if those kids have a disability or something we need to work with, let us know. We can figure out a solution to make those kids successful. One of the examples, one of my colleagues said they had a kid with dyslexia. And they used a steno pad that had different colored paper, and he used different colored pens to write things down. It made it easier for him to remember things and how things worked. The same thing, I've got one young man that has dyslexia, and he's mixed up the classes for the sheep and goats, the numbers multiple times. Instead of reading them left to right, he reads them right to left. And so at the top of his top of his clipboard is a 1 on the left-hand side and a 4 on the right-hand side. Just he remembers, he's looking down at his clipboard, 1 and a 4. Standing behind the animals, 1 and a 4. He just kind of a visual thing to help that young man remember where the animals are and stuff like that as he's going. There's kind of little things like that. There's everything takes a little trial and error to try to figure out what works for different kids. Those are some of those things that we have to work through as agents and coaches. And again, at the end of the day, go talk to those contest officials prior to that contest ever getting started and see what we can do to help those kids be successful. All right, last couple things. Do the best you can to prepare for these contests ahead of time with your kids. Just know ahead of time, like our District 8 4-H livestock judging contest. Those intermediates are going to give 2 sets. The seniors are going to give 4. It's been traditional that those intermediate sets have been market sets, market steers and market lambs. It could be a market hog depending on what those animals look like when they get there, but 9 times out of 10, those intermediates are going to be market animals. The seniors will give 4 sets. They'll give a market lamb, a market hog, a market steer, and a breeding animal. It might be breeding heifers, it might be breeding bulls, but those are the sets that they're going to give the district contest. As Ms. Barrett said earlier, there's not many contests in the state of Texas that are reasons contests. So if it is, be prepared. Most of the contests aren't reasons, but they have questions. Prepare your kids for questions. Make sure you know or more. Some contests have questions, some don't. If you have any questions, always ask for assistance. And last thing I want to cover as a coach, make sure you know your deadlines when you're entering these contests. A lot of these major shows, we have to enter those like San Antonio, Houston, Austin, Fort Worth, all those contests. We have to enter those contests when we enter the livestock back in November. So make sure you're communicating that with your kids. We have to enter those teams many months in advance, not just right then and there. Some of these contests you can enter the day of when you walk in the door, but most of these contests you have to enter ahead of time for the major shows, and even the local county shows that have livestock judging contests. You have to enter those weeks in advance. Some of them do allow you to enter when you get there, but again, they'll charge you a late fee and everything else like that. So I encourage you to get those lists of those contests out there early. Everybody handles differently how they collect registration for those contests, how they collect entries for those contests. I can tell you how we do it here in McLennan County. I send out the list. All right, here's all the fall contests. I send them out. Everybody responds back, says, hey, I want to do this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. I'll go on judging card and I'll enter all those contests for the fall. In December, when the last fall contest is done, I invoice everybody that said they were going to a contest. You owe me this much money for these contests, and I itemize it out. You're to pay their invoice at that point. And then we'll do the same thing for the spring contest. We're about to be done with those here in April, and then we'll send out those invoices in April to cover all the contests that way I'm not trying to collect $10 here, $10 there. Now some counties do that. It's whatever works for you. We have an account for our livestock judging kids managed by volunteers, and so we have a little money in there that allows us to do it like this. Some counties don't have that luxury. When I was in Brazos, we didn't have that. We collected little by little. It's as long as you got somebody willing to help you collect that stuff and make it works. Sometimes it can be kind of difficult. But again, check those deadlines, work with your kids, work with your agents, work with your other coaches to make sure you're getting all those contests entered and we don't leave anybody out if at all possible. That's all I have for everybody. I hope I kind of covered the general overview of how to get a reasons program started in your livestock judging team. If you've got any questions, I'd be happy to answer those at this time. All right, well, I don't have any questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now if I can figure out how to do that. And that is all I got for y'all this evening, ma'am.
Thanks, Jared.
No problem. Thank you.